You really think people like you can change anything? Rinaldi's voice still echoed in her head that night, the smell of smoke clinging to her hair as the city burned behind them. Elara never planned to fight men like him. She only wanted to survive until survival meant choosing what kind of person she would be when the fire stopped. Some debts aren't paid in blood, they're paid in truth. Before we dive in, let me know. What time are you listening to this, and where are you? Drop a comment below, we'd love to hear from you. The coffee pot hissed. Elara poured half a cup, the rest into a chipped thermos, pulled on her coat, and stepped into the hallway. Chicago felt still and gray. Snow dusted the cracked sidewalks, already turning to slush. By the time she reached Rossi's cafe, her fingers were numb. The bell gave its tired jingle. Warmth and noise swallowed her milk, steaming chairs, scraping a radio buzzing through static. Morning L. Mrs. Navarro called from the counter. Elara tied her apron and slipped into motion quiet as someone moving through a sleeping house. Orders came and went. The regulars settled in the old mailman with the same stories two students buried in books. A man lingered near the window in torn coats, watching the trays pass. When a customer left half a cup, she poured it to go added sugar and set it beside him. "Wrong order," she said. "Hate to waste it." He nodded, both hands gripping the cup. "God bless you." She just nodded and went back in. While wiping tables, a woman asked, "Going home for the holidays?" Elara glanced at the melting snow. "No, it's quieter here." "Peace and quiet's worth something," the woman said. Elara smiled faintly and kept working. Just another day, she thought, though somewhere something small had already shifted. Jenna's kid was sick, so Elara stayed late. Extra hours meant rent paid on time. Nights were quieter anyway. Near closing, a man walked in. Tall shoulders squared under a black coat, hair slick with rain, not a regular. His gaze swept the room once before he took a seat at the counter. "Evening," Elara said. Her voice sounded small in the empty space. "Coffee." He nodded once. "Black." She poured from the fresh pot, slid the cup toward him. He accepted it with a polite nod but didn't touch it. His hands stayed loosely clasped, eyes lowered. There was something contained about him, like every movement had been measured before it happened. She wondered briefly what kind of man thought so carefully just to sit down. The bell jingled. 3 men entered together, jackets dripping laughter too loud for a half-empty room. They claimed a booth near the back and ordered beer, wrong kind of place for that. Elara wrote quickly, fingers stiff from the cold, and carried the tray over. A lighter clicked. One hand lingered inside a coat. Metal flashed brief and certain. The tray trembled. Coffee splashed her wrist. She set it down fast, steadying her breath. The man at the counter stayed still, head tilted as if listening for something. Pulse hammering, she reached for a napkin pencil, heavy in her hand. Words spilled out before thought could stop them. 3 men behind you. Gun. The napkin folded, one slipped beside his cup. "Sorry," she murmured, wiping a small spill. A nod. The paper opened, read in silence. His gaze flicked at her, composed, deliberate. A few bills slid beneath the saucer. His phone rang, low words in a clipped foreign rhythm. Then the door closed behind him. The booth went still. A curse muttered. Chairs scraped, footsteps thudded toward the rain. Fingers locked around the counter's edge until her knuckles ached. The clock ticked too loud. Another cup filled just to keep hands busy. Sirens swelled, then faded down the street. Not my business, she told herself twice, then again. When the cafe emptied, cleaning took longer. His cup still waited, a dark ring left on porcelain. Under it, her napkin neatly folded, $100 bill and one line in sharp ink. Not everyone dares to look and tell the truth. Thank you. The words sank deeper than fear. Rain pressed against the glass, steady as breath. The napkin went into her pocket beside her keys. Money could ease rent. Words carried weight of their own. Locking up, she stepped into the wet street. Puddles held red light rippling under passing cars. Somewhere, a door slammed. Another siren called. She kept walking, the note warm against her side, the smell of coffee clinging to her palms. Morning came gray and slow. Streets still glistened from the storm. At Rossi's, the air held traces of sugar and cleaning spray. Elara tied her apron, flipped the sign to open, and began setting cups. A woman sat in the back booth, had to have slipped in without a sound. Coat-buttoned posture, straight gaze, steady and measuring. "Can I get you something?" Elara asked, walking over. The woman smiled, though her eyes didn't soften. "Just tea, thank you. Jasmine, if you have it." Elara nodded, went behind the counter, and found an old tin of green tea leaves. When she brought the cup over, the woman spoke again, voice low and clear. "You worked last night, didn't you?" Elara paused. "Yes." The woman tilted her head slightly. "Then maybe you can help me." A man came in. Tall black coat. He might have left something behind. Elara's pulse caught, but her face stayed neutral. "I don't think so. I cleaned every table." The woman studied her for a long moment, the silence pressing. "Are you sure?" "Yes," Elara said quickly. The woman nodded as if confirming something to herself. "I see." She reached into her pocket, left a 20 on the table. "Thank you for your time." When the woman stood, Elara noticed the faint scar that crossed her knuckle like an old burn. The stranger left without finishing her drink. Only then did Elara exhale. Fingers brushed her apron pocket, the folded napkin, and the $100 bill still there. The paper crinkled softly. She thought of throwing it out, but stayed still. Evening came early. She wiped the counter, slow letting quiet settle before heading home. Streets were damp lights bending in puddles. Hood up, she turned the key, locked the door, and faced a car pulling to the curb. Ryoji Takeda stepped out, coat dry this time, movements deliberate. Miss Vance he greeted like her name had been known all along. She froze. "You shouldn't." He stopped, close voice low. "You wrote that note, didn't you?" The napkin flashed through her mind. She didn't reply. A card appeared in his hand. Ryan Takeda. Takeda Group. The print clean paper heavy. "I just did what anyone would," she said quietly. "Not anyone." His gaze held hers, calm, unreadable. "Then if someone asks about last night, tell them you don't remember. It's safer." Before she could question, he turned back toward the car. His left hand flexed once, as if something ached. "Thank you," he added, still facing away. The card stayed warm in her hand, heavier than it should have been. Next day, rumor had already spread a beating behind the liquor store, a homeless man barely alive. On the bus, 2 women whispered the story between stops. Elara tried not to hear, but the words clung to her like damp air. Her route to Rossi's passed the alley. Yellow tape hung loose, police lights still pulsing, though most officers had gone. A few people lingered, smoking, talking low. Someone moved near the dumpster, wrapped in a gray blanket. It took a moment to recognize him, the man she'd once given coffee to. One eye swollen, shut the other, searching weakly. When their gazes met, he looked through her, unsure or ashamed. "Ma'am, please stand back," an officer said. She did, nodding quickly. Her hands were cold. Chapter 4. Shared Wound Revised. A few feet away, a man raised his phone, filming. Not a reporter, polished shoes, leather gloves, expression too calm. He shifted for a better angle lens. Following the wounded man like this was business, not pity. Their eyes met. His faint, polite smile vanished as he turned back to recording. Elara left quickly, bag clutched tight. Sirens echoed behind her, long after she turned the corner. At Rossi's, the day dragged. Fewer customers, the light dull. Mrs. Navarro moved slower, stacking mugs with tight lips. "That man used to sit out front," she murmured. "You shouldn't have been giving him coffee. People talk. He never hurt anyone. That doesn't matter. Bad things stick to certain faces." By 4, the cafe was nearly empty. The story had spread: homeless assault drug fight, unknown witness. Her name wasn't there, but eyes on the street felt sharper. Before she could clock out, the manager stopped her. "Maybe take a few days off," she said gently. "People get nervous when trouble hangs around. I didn't bring it here. Doesn't matter who does, only who's left standing next to it." The words followed her out. The sky bruised purple. Rain began again, thin and steady. Hood up, she walked through puddles. Halfway down the block, someone waited beneath a lamp post, Ryoji Takeda. Coat dry posture, exact hands buried in his pockets. "Miss Vance," he greeted. She stopped. "You keep finding me. Or maybe you keep walking into storms." His tone quiet. "I heard about the alley. Everyone has. They think I'm part of it. You helped a stranger once. This city forgets kindness faster than debt. I didn't do anything wrong." He nodded slightly. "Chicago prefers easy stories. You're the easiest to blame." A short laugh escaped her. "Then maybe I'll stop giving people coffee." His mouth twitched, almost a smile. From his coat, he drew an umbrella and offered it. "You'll need this more than I will." "You don't have to. Consider it repayment for that note." Their fingers brushed, brief but warm. She turned away. "There are things you shouldn't carry alone," he called after her. She walked until his shape blurred in the rain. At home, the umbrella leaned against the wall, heavier than it looked. When she shook off the water, a folded paper slid free. The handwriting was neat, deliberate. "I once got blamed for someone's death." The words weren't asking for sympathy, just truth shared between strangers who knew the cost of silence. Rain tapped softly. She set the note on her knee and stayed like that until the kettle hissed. The morning rush came slowly. While Elara wiped the counter, a man stepped through the door, well-dressed, hair slicked back, smile practiced. A folded newspaper tucked under his arm, he scanned the cafe once before, walking straight toward her. "Miss Vance?" he asked, as though they'd met before. "Yes." He offered a card across the counter. "Ethan Marr. I'm with the Tribune Weekly. Mind if I ask a few questions about what she said already wary, about a man named Ryan Takeda?" His tone was smooth professional, the kind that pretends to offer choice when there isn't one. Elara shook her head. "I don't know who that is." He smiled faintly, sliding the card closer until it touched her hand. "You sure witnesses said you were working the night of the incident downtown? There was some confusion." She forced a small laugh. "You might have the wrong person." He leaned in, voice dropping. "Confusion makes good headlines, but cooperation makes better ones." The words left a taste of iron in her mouth. "I really can't help you," she said, keeping her tone steady. He straightened, unbothered. "If you remember anything, call me." The business card glared up at her once he left. The Tribune Weekly, its logo familiar from racks across the city. Beneath it, a small insignia, the faint outline of a lion barely visible. She'd seen it before on a delivery truck that always stopped outside the building next to Rossi's. She tucked the card into her pocket but couldn't shake the unease. By the time her shift ended, she walked home with her collar up, boots scraping against frozen slush. Her apartment door looked normal until she reached for the knob. The lock turned too easily, drawers half open, papers scattered on the floor. The filing box she kept old tax forms in lay tipped over folders bent. Nothing seemed stolen, just disturbed. Someone had been looking, not taking. Her chest tightened. She went from room to room, switching on lights, checking corners like a fool. Everything looked ordinary except for the fact that it wasn't. The phone buzzed before she could decide what to do. Noah. Her brother's voice came through, thin and quick. "Elle, did you tell anyone where I live?" "What, of course not." "Why, someone came by asking about you. Said he's a reporter. I didn't tell him anything, I swear. But he knew my name." Her knees gave a small buckle. "It's fine. Just lock your door. Okay? Don't answer to anyone. Elle, what's going on? I don't know." She whispered and hung up before the fear in her voice could spread to his. At the station, the officer behind the desk listened with polite boredom. "So no property stolen?" "No, but someone broke in." "Any threats?" "Not exactly." He scribbled half a note and handed her a form. "Could be kids. Happens a lot. File this and we'll send someone when a unit's free." She thanked him and left the paper limp in her hand. The city stretched wider than it should. She'd never felt smaller. The walk home dragged. At the corner near her building, a car idled with headlights off a shape inside, outlined by stray traffic glow. She hesitated, then kept moving, refusing to look twice. Upstairs, every lock clicked shut. The radiator buzzed faintly. Curtains half drawn, she stood still. Across the street, the same car waited, engine low and steady. A shadow shifted in the driver's seat, still familiar. She turned away, pulse rising. In that car, Ryoji Takeda watched the building. He'd already sent men to check the place and fix the locks. Leaving should have been easy. It wasn't. Elara moved through the apartment, closing drawers, straightening papers. The world tilted, and she pretended it hadn't. Tea steamed untouched beside her. The city murmured below, endless and unbothered. At some point, the car pulled away. The sound folded into traffic, gone before she noticed. Night stretched thin after closing. Rain had thinned to mist. The last buses groaned past. Elara flipped the lock, turned the key, twice slipped the cash envelope into her bag. The clang of the metal gate usually marked safety. Tonight it didn't. Two shapes leaned against the brick wall across the alley, easy posture, watchful stillness. One stepped forward, the other stayed back, waiting. Miss Vance. The first one said, voice casual, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. We just want to talk. She adjusted her grip on the bag strap. You should come by in the morning. We're closed. The smile widened. This isn't about coffee. He moved closer. You spoke to Takeda, didn't you? Her throat tightened. Who? He grabbed her arm, not hard enough to bruise, but enough to make her heart kick. Don't play dumb. What did you tell him? She yanked back, pulse pounding, scanning for anyone else on the street. The other man shifted near the curb, glancing up and down the block as if timing something. Let go, she said, voice low but steady. I don't know what you're talking about. He laughed short and mean. See, that's the thing about people who don't know they talk anyway. She tried to twist free. The strap of her bag slipped from her shoulder. Her knee knocked the doorframe behind her. Fear crawled up her spine, fast and cold. Then the alley exploded in white light. Headlights flared from the far end, flooding everything with sharp glare. The two men froze, blinking. A car door opened. Ryoji Takeda one hissed under his breath. The tall figure stepped out, coat half open, steps slow but deliberate. His voice came low, even. Walk away. The men looked at each other, then at him. The taller one muttered a curse and backed off. The other hesitated, but when Ryoji's hand slipped into his pocket, both turned and vanished into the rain-dark street. The only sound was Elara's uneven breathing and the soft click of the car engine cooling. Ryoji came closer but didn't reach for her. You all right? She nodded too quickly. How did you know? He studied her for a moment. I have people watching the area. You're having me followed, protected, he corrected, quiet but firm. Not because you're important, you just have a habit of making people worry. The reply disarmed her more than the encounter had. That's supposed to make me feel better? No, he said simply. For a moment, neither spoke. Ryoji opened the passenger door and waited until she moved. He drove without music, headlights tracing the slick street. She kept her hands folded in her lap, aware of the tremor she couldn't quite hide. When they stopped at a red light, she said quietly, I should thank you. He didn't look over. You shouldn't have been alone. It's my job, she said. Someone has to lock up. Then have someone else do it next time. She smiled faintly, too tired to argue. Do you give orders to everyone? His mouth twitched, but he didn't answer. The light changed and the car moved again. The ride ended in front of her building. He didn't cut the engine. She reached for the handle but paused. They won't come back, will they? Not tonight. That should have been enough. Elara stepped into the drizzle, glanced back once. He was still in the car, one hand on the wheel, gaze turned past her. She wanted to speak but found no words, only nodded a quiet thanks he probably didn't need. The car didn't move until she'd gone. Days passed. The same faces returned, the same chalkboard filled with coffee orders. Rossi's smelled of cinnamon again instead of fear. Elara moved through the hours, easily grateful for their sameness. Wednesday, Mika Tanaka arrived, neat coat, hair pulled into a perfect knot. She didn't sit. "Mr. Takeda asked me to check in," she said. "He's out of town business trip. West Coast." Her tone was flat but not unfriendly. "He wanted to be sure things are quiet." "They are." Mika studied her, then nodded. "Good. He doesn't like loose ends." Before leaving, Elara slid a folded napkin across the counter. "Can you give him this 2 words in black ink?" "Thank you." Mika's eyes softened barely. "I will." When the door closed, the cafe felt lighter. That afternoon, Noah showed up, grin uneven as always. "You look less like someone who hasn't slept in a week. I've had practice." After her shift, they walked by the river. Musicians played near the bridge notes drifting over the water. "So about that mystery guy," Noah said. "Still seeing him, I wasn't seeing him. Right. The tall one who rescues you from muggers and sends secret notes. Totally platonic." She nudged him. "You watch too many bad movies." He laughed. "What's he like? Quiet? Serious? The kind who's already figured everything out and hates that you haven't? Sounds fun at parties." "He doesn't smile much," she said almost to herself. "Maybe he's saving one for you, please." Yet her voice carried a warmth she couldn't hide. They walked until dusk turned the river black. For a while, calm felt possible. That night, the cafe emptied early. She counted the register, humming under her breath. Coins, bills, receipts, each motion steadying her. When she lifted the tip jar, something white caught her eye, a folded slip beneath a $5 bill. 2 words, dark ink. "Stay safe." She unfolded it, pulse quickening. Someone had been close enough to leave it there, close enough to know her rhythm when she cleaned, when she counted. The bell hadn't rung. No one had come in for 20 minutes. Across the street, a gray car idled, headlights dim silver under the bar's neon glow. It lingered, then rolled away. Elara tucked the note into her apron and went back to wiping the counter. Cloth in one hand, cleaner in the other, she moved in circles over wood already shining. She thought of Ryoji somewhere far away, maybe watching another skyline, probably still not smiling. The last light above the espresso machine flickered. She turned it off. The soft hum of the refrigerator filled the quiet. She knew something was wrong the moment she turned the corner. A strip of yellow tape crossed the entrance of Rossi's cafe, fluttering in the wind. The front door was sealed, a notice stapled crookedly over the glass closed, "For investigation, financial division." 2 officers stood nearby, one smoking, one staring at his phone. They didn't look like they wanted questions. Elara froze, the cold biting through her gloves. "Excuse me, what happened?" The older officer gave her a quick glance. "You work here?" "Yes." "Then you'll get a call." He gestured toward the notice. "Owners under review. We're not at liberty to discuss details." "Mrs. Navarro." He shrugged. "That the manager. She's gone." The word "gone" echoed in her head longer than it should have. Pedestrians slowed to look, then moved on. Someone across the street whispered to another. She caught the word "money laundering" before they noticed her and fell quiet. The sign she'd written last week, "Try our new caramel latte," still hung crookedly on the board. By noon, rumors spread faster than truth. The cash deposits didn't match the receipts. People like her must have known, someone else murmured as she passed. Heads turned when she walked by. At home, her phone rang before she'd taken off her coat. Noah's voice came in fast, uneasy. "Elle, the police were here. They said my name's on some transfer list money going through Rossi's. I don't even know what that means." Her heart dropped. "You didn't?" "Of course not, but they want me to come in tomorrow. What's happening?" She sat down, gripping the phone tight. "Don't talk to anyone without me there." "Are you in trouble?" "I don't know yet," she whispered. After they hung up, she stared at the wall. The apartment felt suddenly too quiet, as if listening. The radiator hissed, and the sound made her flinch. A knock came minutes later. 3 short raps, precise. When she opened the door, Mika Tanaka stood there in a charcoal coat, eyes sharper than usual. "We need to talk." Elara stepped aside. Please tell me this isn't what it looks like. It's exactly what it looks like, Mika said. Someone's using the cafe's accounts to move money. They're tying it to you. That's impossible. Not to them. You were the one closing every night handling cash. You fit the profile of an easy witness, someone small enough to break under pressure. Elara's breath hitched. Why me? Because they think you've been talking to Takeda. She hesitated, voice unsteady. Wasn't I? Mika's expression didn't change. He doesn't involve civilians, but you've been noticed. They want leverage, and you're it. Do they know where I live? They already do. Elara leaned against the counter, dizzy. Does he know? Mika's gaze softened slightly. Takeda always knows before everyone else. That's what keeps him alive. The question whether he'd help died before it reached her lips. Mika handed over a folded note. Numbers you can call if anything happens. Don't answer unknown ones. Then the heels faded down the hall. Tea steamed untouched. The phone lit up once then again. Unknown number. It buzzed a third time. A message appeared. You've been protected long enough. Let's see how well he saves you now. No name, just that. The glow on the screen pulsed like something breathing. Throat dry, she cut, the power yanked, the plug shoved the phone into a drawer. Before dawn, hood pulled low, bag tight against her side. Elara slipped into the street. Noah hadn't answered all night. His last text read only, they said they just want to talk. Each block stretched longer than the one before. Cars slowed, reflections flashed in dark windows. Near the bus stop, two men waited too still for commuters too alert to be lost. One stepped forward, the other spread out behind. Elara Vance. She froze. Who's asking you? Arhi said, and reached for her arm. She pulled back, ready to shout, but a noise cut through an engine, roaring closer tires, slicing through puddles. A black sedan swerved toward the curb. The passenger door burst open. Get in, Ryoji's voice, sharp, familiar. The men turned. She hesitated only a second before he grabbed her wrist and pulled. The door slammed just as something cracked against the wall beside her, a gunshot echoing through the narrow street. Her scream was swallowed by the sound of tires, spinning on wet asphalt. The car lurched forward, then sped into the maze of alleys, rain hammering the roof. What was that? She gasped. You knew they'd come for me? Ryoji didn't look at her eyes fixed on the mirror. If I'd been there sooner, they would have shot you before I reached you, so you let them find me first. Her voice broke between anger and fear. If I stay close, I make you a target, he said, tone flat but roughened at the edges. They don't aim for me anymore. They aim for what's around me. She pressed her shoulder against the door, trying to breathe. The streetlights blurred past in streaks of water and glass. They didn't stop until the car slipped into the mouth of an old parking structure. Ryoji cut the engine and listened. Far-off sirens wailed, fading toward the river. Elara's hands wouldn't stop shaking. Who are they, Rinaldi's men? He said. They've decided you're leverage. A dull ache spread across her shoulder. When she touched it, her fingers came away wet and red. I think I'm hit, she whispered, more surprised than scared. He reached for her movements, quick but careful. Hold still. The fabric of her coat tore easily. The wound wasn't deep, but the sight of blood made her dizzy. Ryoji pressed a folded handkerchief against it, his touch firm, steady. You'll be fine, he murmured, though his jaw tightened when she flinched. She tried to speak but stopped at the look in his eyes, focused, almost tender. He'd seen this before, probably done this before, yet the way his hands trembled just slightly betrayed something else. You shouldn't have come, she said quietly. I didn't have a choice. He kept his hand on her shoulder longer than needed, his thumb, tracing the edge of the bandage he'd made from his handkerchief. When he finally met her eyes, his voice dropped lower. I'm sorry. For what? For being late. His words caught on something unspoken. This time I didn't protect you fast enough. She wanted to tell him it wasn't his fault, but the truth stuck in her throat. Ryoji leaned back in his seat, shoulders rigid. The lines of his face softened for a moment before closing again, as if the apology had cost more than he could afford. Elara looked down at her hand, still stained with blood, at the cloth pressed to her shoulder, at the man sitting inches away, who'd pulled her out of death's reach like it was instinct. The parking lot lights flickered, washing them both in a faint gray glow. Her heartbeat slowed to match the rhythm of the rain. Somewhere above, a drop found its way through the cracks and fell onto her hand, cold and startling. She didn't move. Neither did he. The car ran out of fuel before dawn. Ryoji coasted it into a narrow dirt road, the rain having turned to mist that clung to the windshield. Beyond the trees, an old house leaned into itself, half swallowed by weeds. He killed the lights. "We'll stay here," he said. Elara followed him out, clutching her coat closed. A couch sat broken in the corner dust, heavy on the floorboards. Still, it was a shelter. He checked the doors, moving with quiet precision. When he was satisfied, he tossed her his jacket. For the draft. She caught it, hesitated. "Whose place is this?" "Someone I used to trust," he said. "He's gone now. Gone." She didn't ask how. She didn't want to know. They sat across from each other near the old fireplace, unlit but dry. The silence pressed until she couldn't bear it anymore. "Ryoji," she said, her voice thin. "Who are you, really?" He didn't look up at first. A man who forgot how to live like everyone else. "That's not an answer. It's the only one I have left." Something between anger and exhaustion slipped into her tone. "Then what am I to you, another person you pull out of trouble so you can feel like you still have control?" He leaned back, eyes narrowing slightly. "You think this is about control. I think it's about guilt. Or power. Maybe both." She gave a short, bitter laugh. "And I'm the perfect distraction. The woman who doesn't know when she's being used." Her words hung there sharp and trembling. Ryoji's jaw tightened. For a long time, the only sound was the wind slipping through the cracked walls. Then softly he said, "I didn't find you because I pitied you, Elara." Her breath caught. "I wanted to understand why someone as afraid as you still acted," he continued, voice lower, now almost uncertain. "You should have run that night in the cafe, but you didn't." Elara looked at him, really looked. The mask of calm he always wore had fractured. Underneath was something raw, loneliness maybe, or exhaustion that ran too deep to hide. "I didn't think," she said quietly. "I just did what felt right. That's what I can't do anymore." His eyes dropped to the bandage on her shoulder. He reached out, fingers hovering before resting gently against it. The touch was careful, reverent even. "You shouldn't have been dragged into this. It's a little late for that. If I hurt you again," he said, "if this keeps getting worse, leave. Don't look back." Her throat tightened. "I already tried leaving," once she whispered. "But the past doesn't stay behind. It finds you." Something flickered across his face, understanding regret, a memory she couldn't read. His hand fell away, but the warmth lingered where his skin had touched hers. Ryoji shifted closer enough that she could feel the quiet weight of him beside her. Neither spoke. The space between their shoulders narrowed. Her pulse steadied against the ache in her arm. His sleeve brushed hers. The contact was small, almost accidental, but it felt like the world contracting to a single point. "You should sleep," he murmured. "So should you." "I don't anymore," he said, a faint smile ghosting across his lips. She exhaled softly, eyes tracing the faint scar near his temple, the curve of fatigue in his posture. He didn't look like power now. He looked like someone who'd been carrying it too long. Minutes, maybe hours passed. The house settled, sighing under its own weight. Elara leaned back against the wall, her shoulder grazing him again. She didn't move away. Their breaths fell into the same rhythm, quiet and even. No more questions. No more pretending that distance still existed. Ryoji left before sunrise, saying only that he had to meet someone to fix what could still be fixed. His voice had that hard, unreadable tone again, not because he didn't trust her, but because he didn't want her to know. When the sound of his car disappeared down the dirt road, Elara poured water from the bottle they'd shared and drank without tasting it. She began cleaning up small movements to keep herself from thinking too much, folding the blanket, clearing the bottles, pushing dust aside with the edge of her shoe. That's when she saw it. His phone left on the floor beside the couch, its screen black. For a moment, she thought about ignoring it. Curiosity had never done her any favors. But the phone buzzed, once a quiet vibration against the wood, and stopped. The screen lit long enough for her to see the word unknown. Her thumb hesitated. Then she unlocked it. The call log was mostly numbers without names. The most recent entry wasn't a call, it was an audio file, just under a minute long. She tapped it. Static first, then a man's voice, rough American, impatient. The woman's seen more than she should. You want her quiet or gone? Ryoji's voice followed, calm but thin-edged. Handle it, discreetly. Then another voice, different, sharper. Understood. We'll clean up. The recording ended with silence so absolute it rang in her ears. Her hands went cold. He hadn't meant for her to hear this. Maybe it wasn't even new. But the message was clear enough. Someone had ordered a cleanup, and she was at the center of it. If she stayed quiet, she'd vanish quietly too. The fear that had shadowed her for weeks surged again, but underneath it was something heavier, harder. She'd been waiting for safety to come from someone else waiting for rescue. It was never going to come that way. She took a breath, steadying her hands, and scrolled through the contacts. Mika's number appeared halfway down the list. When the woman answered, her tone was clipped. Takeda's phone. "Who is this? It's me," Elara said. "He left it here." Pause. "Where are you?" "Somewhere I shouldn't be. I need your help." Another pause, longer this time. "What do you need? I want to meet Rinaldi." The line went silent. Mika. "You don't understand what you're saying." "I do," Elara said, surprising herself with how steady her voice sounded. "I'm tired of being hunted. If I'm already a target, I might as well walk toward it. You think you can talk your way through that he eats people like you for breakfast? Then maybe he'll choke on me." Something like a sigh came through the line. "You have no idea what kind of man he is." "I know the kind of woman I've become," Elara said, "and I can't keep running." Mika's reply came after a pause. "Send your location. Don't move until I call back." The line went dead. The phone slipped into her pocket, heart pounding not from fear, but decision. Clouds thinned the sky, paling. She grabbed her bag, pocketed the small USB from Ryoji's keychain, the file still heavy on her mind. The metal felt warm, almost alive. Floorboards creaked under her feet. Each step sounded like an ending. The city waited ahead, burning quietly on the horizon. The river glimmered beneath the hotel lights, all glass and gold pretending at peace. Perfume and silverware filled the hall. Laughter drifted bright, but hollow. A tray of champagne balanced on her hand, the borrowed uniform tight across her shoulders. Mika's pass had gotten her in along with one warning: don't talk. Don't meet anyone's eyes. She wove between tables, head lowered. Every step felt sharp. These men traded jokes like weapons. Beyond the ballroom doors, Rinaldi waited. Mika brushed past near the buffet. Private suite, 3rd floor, 2 guards, then disappeared into the crowd. The elevator doors closed her off from the noise. The recorder hidden in her sleeve pressed cold against her skin. On the 3rd floor, quiet returned, thick, expensive. The corridor smelled of cigars and polish. 2 guards flanked the suite. One said lazily, "Kitchen's closed." Manager sent the wine list. She replied steady. A shrug, a glance, they opened the door. The suite glowed under one lamp. Rinaldi sat behind the desk tie, loose glass of scotch in hand. Broader than she'd imagined, a thin scar catching the light along his jaw. So he said, smiling like this was small talk, "You're the one making all that noise." She placed the tray down. "I don't know what you mean." "Don't insult me." He pointed at the chair across from him. "Sit." She obeyed. The recorder blinked once under her sleeve. Takeda sent you, he said softly. Thought I'd let my guard down for a pretty face. I came on my own. That's worse, he laughed. You know how many people Takeda's discarded when they stop being useful? I don't believe you. Of course you don't. You need to think you're different. He poured more scotch, the scent stinging. He's not coming for you, sweetheart. He never saves anyone without a price. Her hands shook beneath the table, but her voice held. Maybe he protects people because he owes them. Maybe he owes someone like me. The smile thinned. You talk brave for someone cornered. From the folder, he pulled a set of papers. Sign and your brother walks free. It's a confession fraud laundering, take your pick. Take the fall, and this ends. Her pulse thudded. And if I don't, you disappear. Quieter, that way. The pen gleamed between them. Fear doesn't work on me anymore, she said. It works on everyone. A soft click behind her. She knew that sound, the weight of someone who didn't need to be seen to own the room. Rinaldi's jaw tightened. Ah, the ghost himself. Ryoji's voice cut through calm and cold. You should have stayed buried, Dominic. Then motion Rinaldi's hand diving for the drawer, Ryoji's arm already raised. One shot split the room. The lamp burst glass raining across the desk. Elara hit the floor as Ryoji pulled her down. Smoke curled from his gun. Rinaldi was sprawled blood, blooming on his sleeve. Move, Ryoji snapped. Her knees buckled. He caught her wrist, pulling her toward the hall. Alarms blared the smoke from the shattered lamp, setting them off. Red lights pulsed through the corridor, voices rising below. He shoved open a side door to the service stairs. Head down, don't stop, I can't, you can. His grip tightened, pulling her close for just a second. I told you to run when I wasn't there. You didn't listen. She wanted to argue, but the sound of boots coming down the hall cut her off. They moved half running, half falling through the stairwell. Somewhere above, another gun fired. Elara stumbled, coughing. Ryoji's hand stayed on her shoulder, guiding, anchoring. When they burst out into the alley behind the hotel, rain slapped their faces like it had been waiting. Her lungs burned. They didn't stop until the building shrank behind them, only the echo of chaos left in the distance. Elara's chest heaved, tears mixed with rain. Ryoji glanced back once, jaw set. His eyes met hers, not a promise, not reassurance, just shared exhaustion. Mika paced near the door phone in hand, her voice low as she spoke in Japanese to someone Elara couldn't name. When she hung up, the silence between them filled the room like fog. Is he all right? Elara finally asked. Mika didn't look at her. He's alive. That's not what I asked. Another pause. Then quietly, he doesn't want you to come. The words hit harder than she expected. What do you mean he told me to keep you out of it, to put you somewhere safe? Elara laughed. Safe after everything. There's no out of it anymore. This started with me. Mika's eyes flicked toward her, sharp and unreadable. You really believe that I saw Rinaldi's men? I saw what happened. Of course it's about me. Mika crossed her arms. You have no idea why Rinaldi went after you, do you? Elara hesitated. Because I helped Takeda that night at the cafe. That's only part of it. Mika's tone softened, though it didn't lose its edge. When you warned him, you gave him a way out, a way to sever ties with Rinaldi without breaking code. He used your act to justify ending the alliance. Rinaldi lost his leverage, his profits, his face. You became the perfect excuse for war. Elara stared at her. You're saying this? This whole thing happened because I picked up a napkin, because you did the right thing, Mika said. In our world, that's the same as lighting a match in a room full of gasoline. Something cold bloomed through her. And Ryoji. He didn't try to stop it. Mika didn't answer. Did he know Elara's voice cracked? Yes. The single word sliced through her. He knew Rinaldi would use you to corner him. Mika continued, quieter now. And he let it happen, because the only way to end this was to force Rinaldi's hand. He calculated the cost. Elara rose to her feet. The cost people die in these wars, Elara. Sometimes one death ends 100. She shook her head, backing away. Don't do that. Don't make it sound noble. Mika sighed. I'm not defending him. I'm explaining to him. You made him hesitate, and that hesitation almost killed him. You were his weakness, and in our world, that's the same as signing a death sentence. Elara sank back down, eyes fixed on the floor. The images tangled in her mind, Ryoji pulling her out of gunfire, the way his hands trembled when he touched her wound, the look in his eyes when he said, "Don't look back." Has all of it been calculated, or was it both duty and something dangerously close to care? Mika moved toward the door. I didn't tell you this so you'd hate him. I told you because you need to decide whether to stay in a story that was never yours to begin with. Elara didn't answer. Her gaze drifted to the cracked window pane where streaks of water ran like threads of mercury. What happens to people who try to leave? She asked softly. They vanish, Mika said, hand on the knob, and if they're lucky, no one remembers their names. When the door closed, Elara sat still for a long time. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the old folded napkin. The pencil mark had faded, but the words were still there. Not everyone has the courage to look and tell the truth. She unfolded it slowly, smoothing the wrinkles. That line had once meant safety, gratitude, connection. Now it reads like a warning. Her throat tightened, but no tears came. Only the dull ache of something collapsing within her. The streets were empty, gleaming with rain. She walked without direction past shuttered shops and flickering signs until she reached the bus stop. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. One message, unknown number. Noah is with us. Don't call the police. The words blurred for a second before they settled. She stared at the screen until it dimmed, then closed the phone slowly. She started walking, her steps steady now. Waiting wasn't an option anymore. The message she sent was short. If you still mean what you said, that I make people care, come. But not to save me. She hit send before she could think better of it. The air at the docks reeked of salt and rust. Rain slicked the wooden planks, each step echoing against the hollow water beneath. Cargo containers loomed like dark monuments around her, the kind of place people vanished into. A single light burned near the end of the pier. Rinaldi stood under it, sharp suit, cigarette glowing between his fingers. Behind him, Noah was tied to a chair, bruised but breathing. The boy's eyes widened when he saw her. You came alone? Rinaldi said, smiling as if pleased by her obedience. Smart girl. Elara lifted her chin. You wanted the recording. Here it is. She held up a small flash drive. The fake one Mika had helped her craft it earlier that afternoon. He took a drag from the cigarette, the ember flaring. Do you know what I like about you, Miss Vance? You have courage, but you still think it matters. Maybe it does. He chuckled. Takeda's not coming. He's learned what happens to anyone who crosses me. You unfortunately haven't. Elara looked at him steadily. You don't understand him. Rinaldi's eyes narrowed. And you do enough to know he doesn't make threats twice. Something shifted in the air, a faint vibration through the wooden boards. Rinaldi frowned, turning his head slightly. Then came the sound, low, steady footsteps. Ryoji stepped from the dark, flanked by 3 men. His shirt was torn, a smear of dried blood near the collarbone. Rain clung to his hair. His face stayed calm. Dominic, he said, voice low, you've overstayed your welcome. Rinaldi's men reached for their weapons. Ryoji moved first. The fight unfolded in silence movement. Breath, the thud of bodies. No wasted sound, no hesitation. Elara ducked as a man lunged. She swung for his knee, missed, stumbled, found Noah's chair. The ropes cut into her palms as she pulled. Run when I say, she whispered. He nodded, eyes wide. A gun cracked, echoing over the dock. Panic scattered through the rain. Rinaldi shouted, then quiet, then the sound of bodies hitting wood. Noah was free when another man grabbed her from behind. Pain shot up her arm. She twisted, caught a loose pipe, and struck. The weight jolted through her wrist. The man dropped. Ryoji was cornered near the crates, 2 men closing in. She ran before thinking swung again. The gun flew from one's hand. Ryoji caught the opening and drove his elbow into the other's throat. They stood back to back, breath, ragged. "Go," he shouted. "Not without Noah. He's clear move." She didn't. They moved together now, every strike aligned trust, replacing doubt. Sirens rose first, a hum, then everywhere. Blue and red washed across the dock. Rinaldi tried for the boat, but froze in the light before the officers reached him. Elara lowered the pipe. The sound of sirens filled the gaps between their breaths. "You knew they'd use me," she said. He nodded. "I knew. I didn't think they'd hurt you. I was wrong. So what was I? A move on the board at first." He met her eyes. "Now you're the reason the board matters. No promises, no explanations, just truth." Officers shouted orders, faces flashing red, blue, red. They looked at each other through the light, something in their silence finally steady. For once they stood on the same side, not safe, but real. Someone called her name. She turned as hands guided her toward a waiting car. Ryoji gave a small nod, barely there enough. "This time, you're not alone." The convoy left the docks before dawn, 3 cars rolling through wet streets. Rinaldi cuffed in the first, pale but burning. Behind Elara and Ryoji sat in the second, quiet, drained. Police lights flickered ahead, fading as they left the river behind. It should have been over. Then came the sound, distant at first, then deafening. Tires screamed. The lead car veered hard. A white flash split the dawn. Metal shrieked. The world spun. Elara's head struck the glass stars, bursting behind her eyes. When the car stopped, smoke filled her mouth and lungs. Ryoji was already moving. Out his voice was hoarse, urgent. She reached for the door, but the handle jammed. Men shouted short-clipped orders. Bullets cracked against steel. The driver slumped forward, horn blaring. Ryoji kicked the door open and pulled her out. Flames licked at the wreckage behind them. "Run that way," he ordered, pointing toward the embankment. She refused. "I'm not leaving you. Now, Elara!" Before she could answer, another explosion ripped through the first car. The blast threw them both down. Pain flared across her arm, hot and searing. When she looked up, Ryoji was on the ground, blood blooming dark across his side. For a heartbeat, everything went quiet, just the sound of fire chewing through metal. She crawled to him, dragging his weight against the guardrail. "Stay with me, please." His breath came shallow, uneven. "You need to go." "No." She pressed her hands to the wound, trembling. "I can't." He caught her wrist, his grip weak but firm. "Listen to me." She shook her head, tears streaking through soot. Don't let anyone decide your life for you," he whispered. "Not Rinaldi, not me." Her heart stuttered. "Then don't you dare die after saying that." His mouth twitched into something almost like a smile. "That's not up to me anymore." Behind them, the third car screeched to a halt. 2 surviving officers stumbled out, shouting into radios. She waved frantically. "Help! He's hurt." They didn't hear her over the chaos. Smoke blurred everything into gray. She tried lifting him, her arms shaking from the effort. "Come on, help me." Ryoji groaned as she hauled him to his feet. The heat from the wreck pressed against her back. Flames climbed higher, reflecting off shards of glass. She half dragged, half carried him toward the road. The sound of sirens began again, far away, faint, but growing. "Almost there," she murmured. "Just hold on." He coughed, blood bright against his lips. "You're stubborn. I learned from the best." A car appeared down the road, a patrol cruiser rushing toward them. She stepped into its path, waving both arms. The brakes screamed the vehicle, skidding to a stop inches away. 2 officers jumped out. "Ma'am, get back. He's bleeding out. Help him," she yelled. They hesitated only a second before lifting Ryoji onto the hood, checking his pulse. One of them shouted into the radio for backup. Elara stumbled beside him, chest heaving. The adrenaline had turned to nausea. She leaned against the car, trying to steady her breath. Ryoji's hand found hers again, cold but certain. "You did good," he whispered. She squeezed his fingers. "Don't talk," His eyes fluttered shut, a trace of peace settling over his face, the first she'd ever seen. The sirens closed in louder now. Blue and red lights danced across the broken glass across her hands, slick with his blood. Someone pulled her back, prying her fingers loose. She didn't let go until they forced her to. As medics lifted him onto the stretcher, his eyelids fluttered just once, like he was still searching for her through the haze. The ambulance doors closed. Elara stood by the road-soaked smoke drifting into pale morning light. Sirens faded down the highway, her coat-torn palms, raw breath uneven, yet something inside her settled. The world still loud, but no longer chaos. She pressed a hand against the blood on her shirt, warmth seeping through her fingers. For a moment his eyes had looked free. Days blurred morning light through half-drawn blinds, the smell of antiseptic machines whispering in their endless rhythm. Elara became part of the pattern. No one asked who she was anymore. The nurses knew her silence. She arrived before noon, 2 coffees in hand, one black one lightly sweet. Both went on the table. She'd sit a while listening to the monitors hum. Ryoji slept most days. The doctors said he was healing, slow but certain. Whenever his fingers twitched or his breath caught, she left quietly before his eyes opened. Some things stayed safer, unfinished. News vans vanished, headlines slipped from the front page. Takeda Group cooperates with federal investigation. Yakuza network in Chicago collapses. The papers spoke like closure. She knew better. One afternoon she passed the cafe Rossi's once. The sign gone brick, painted over. She paused paper cup, cooling in her hands, then crossed the street without turning back. Noah mentioned moving on first. He'd found work at a repair shop on the south side. His hands smelled of oil again. His shoulders no longer carried the same weight. "Are you going back to work somewhere?" he asked one evening as they walked home from the bus stop. She thought about it for a moment. "I don't know yet." "You should," he said. "You're terrible at doing nothing." That made her laugh, small, real, the first in weeks. "Maybe I'll try living for a while," she said. "Just living." Noah nodded, though he didn't quite understand. Few people ever did. The next morning she walked to the river, the same stretch of water where the docks had burned now, calm and clean. The surface moved slow, reflecting a pale sky. A few leaves drifted past their color, already giving way to brown. She leaned against the railing metal, cool beneath her hands. Her reflection rippled on the water, blurred, not broken. For once, no rush in her chest, just quiet. She realized how long she'd been surviving instead of living, how every breath before had been defense. Stillness felt foreign, like stepping into a room she'd once owned but forgotten. A breeze lifted her hair, carrying the scent of rain and sugar from a bakery nearby. Life was happening again, with or without her. She took the long way back, passing familiar corners now stripped of meaning. People moved around her, each caught in their own story. For once, being unseen felt like peace. At the hospital gate, she stopped. Ryoji sat by one of them, head tilted, reading something she couldn't make out. His arm still bandaged his face, thinner but alive. She didn't go in, stayed by the fence, watching the light shift across his profile. He looked up, once eyes scanning the street, but not quite finding her. Maybe he hadn't seen her. Maybe he had, and left the space untouched. The cafe sat between a laundromat and a flower shop near Lake Michigan. He was already there. Black coat unarmed, the faint scar along his jaw, catching the light. Ryoji Takeda. Neither spoke his name, nor asked why he'd come. She reached for a cup. Espresso. A nod. When she set it down, he murmured, "It smells the same." "Different blend," she replied. He studied the cup before lifting it. Steam rose between them, thinning into quiet. Wind from the lake pressed against the awning, carrying a chill through the seams of the door. "You're not worried someone might recognize you?" "They'll think I'm someone who looks like trouble," he said. Her mouth curved. A calmer kind now. They didn't mention hospitals or fire, only small things. The weather, a leak above the window, how the wind sometimes made the city smell clean. When the crowd thinned, he spoke again. "The day I woke up, I thought you'd left." I almost did. What stopped you running kept me alive, she said. But I'd never stop if I didn't stand still once. He nodded. Staying's harder. It is. The quiet settled like air before rain. She poured herself a cup, leaned against the counter. Do you still believe in honor? I do, he said. Not the kind I used to fight for. What kind then? The kind that lets you live with yourself afterward. Her fingers tightened around the cup. That's the right kind. Traffic hummed faintly from the main road. The clock ticked above the shelf. He traced the rim of his cup, an unthinking motion that said enough. When he rose, she followed him to the door. The bell chimed as he reached for the handle. Her hand brushed his light brief warm. He turned his palm upward but didn't close it. I owe you more than my life. We just pulled each other out, she said. A small, real smile crossed his face. Then he stepped into the drizzle. She watched him cross the street, coat darkening with rain, and didn't call out. The scent of coffee drifted into the damp air. She stood there until the street emptied, then went back to wipe the counter. His cup sat where he'd left it, a faint ring tracing the rim. The courthouse smelled of rain and paper like stories told too often. Elara sat in the waiting room, fingers wrapped around a cup of lukewarm water. Reporters had called her name on the steps, cameras flashing questions sharp. She hadn't stopped. Under the pale lights, the world felt smaller. When they called her to the stand, she stood without meeting anyone's eyes. The prosecutor began with routine questions, dates, names, things she'd repeated too many times. Then came the shift, the one she'd known was coming. Miss Vance, the lawyer, said, pacing a few steps closer. Are you aware that by giving information about Rinaldi's operation, you indirectly aided in reducing the sentence of Ryoji Takeda, a known criminal organization leader? Elara didn't flinch. I was aware that telling the truth might have consequences. Consequences, he repeated, tilting his head. You helped one criminal destroy another. Do you call that justice? She met his gaze. I call it what happened. Justice is what you call it after you write the report. A few people in the gallery shifted. The judge's gavel tapped once, warning for silence. The lawyer tried again. Do you believe Takeda deserves freedom? I believe in people doing what they can to stop the bleeding, she said simply, even if their hands aren't clean. He frowned, but she didn't wait for the next question. You asked about justice, she said evenly. You call it punishment. I call it stopping the same thing from happening again. Silence followed. The judge nodded for her to step down. Outside the courtroom, cameras flashed, voices surged, but officers cleared a path. She walked through head-down steps echoing against the marble. Rain had left the stone damp, the scent sharp and clean. Mika stood near the steps, hands in her coat pockets. You handled that well, she said. I said what I knew. They'll twist it anyway. They always do. Mika hesitated. He didn't leave the country. He's here quietly. No one knows where. Elara's breath caught, though her face stayed calm. He's done with that world, yes. Walked away before it swallowed him. Maybe it's the first time walking away didn't mean losing. Mika's mouth curved faintly. He'll hear what you said in court. I hope he doesn't. He's earned silence. They parted without touch. By dusk, the street was empty. At the cafe, a bouquet waited on the step, plain paper, red string, one branch of cherry blossoms. She touched a petal. It trembled, then stilled. A year passed quietly like a tide that never returned the same. The cafe found its rhythm mornings full of chatter, afternoons, slow and kind. Regulars came and went, students, office workers, old men, nursing a single cup. Elara no longer thought about survival when she opened the door. She simply lived. Noah finished school that spring and moved to a small apartment across town, close enough to visit, far enough to start his own life. When he came by, he brought stories instead of worries, engines, co-workers, late-night takeout. Watching him laugh felt like the smallest miracle. Ryoji Takeda stood in the doorway. White shirt sleeves rolled, no jacket, no guards. A small book in hand, its cover worn at the edges. He looked different, not younger, not older, but lighter somehow. Is the coffee still as bitter as before he asked? Elara didn't blink. You'll have to remind yourself. When she set the cup in front of him, the surface trembled slightly, catching the sunlight. He nodded his thanks, the corner of his mouth lifting. You make it stronger now. People change, she said. Even their recipes. He smiled, faint but real. Maybe I can sit still for a while this time. Can you? He tilted his head. I'll try, but I won't promise. They didn't talk about the past or about the things it had taken from them. Words weren't needed. The silence itself was familiar enough. The cafe clock ticked softly above them. Ryoji turned the small book in his hands. It's poetry, he said. Old verses from Kyoto. I thought of bringing it to you before, but I wasn't ready to come back. She nodded. No one ever is. He looked at her for a moment longer, then said quietly, You rebuilt this place. It rebuilt itself, she said. I just stayed long enough to see it through. The light shifted again, brushing across his face. For the first time since she'd met him, he looked unguarded, not powerful, not dangerous, just present. After a while, she lowered her gaze to the counter. Some people only meet when everything's already broken, she said softly. He didn't look away. And some only start living after everything's broken. Her lips curved, almost a smile. Maybe that's true. Elara stood and moved behind the counter again. You'll need another cup, she said. He watched her pour the steady rhythm of her hands, the simple grace of someone who'd learned how to stay. When she placed the second cup before him, neither spoke. The city went on the hum of cars, the faint laughter from the sidewalk life unfolding in its quiet way. They sat together as the afternoon light thinned, saying nothing, listening to the sound of the world as it slowed. There was no music, no applause, no moment that asked to be remembered. Only the soft clink of porcelain, the smell of coffee, the hush between two people who had already said everything that mattered, and it felt enough. Not every story ends with redemption, but every act of courage plants something that lasts longer than fear. Elara and Ryoji didn't find perfection. They found stillness, the kind that comes after chaos when people stop running and start choosing who they want to be. Maybe that's what peace really is, not the absence of pain, but the quiet strength to stay rebuild and keep the door open for whatever light remains.